saying. Dude, you're getting a very mindful Mark today, by the way. If you haven't noticed, I'm very like
That's what
I'm
yeah,
zen today,
yeah,
man.
yeah.
I meditated, I went to church, I journaled, I read.
That's
I'm
what
like
I'm saying.
chilling
So
out.
that's
Yeah,
why I
dude.
booked you in for a Sunday, man.
Yeah,
That's why I
dude.
booked you in for a Sunday.
I'm much more zen today. But yeah, dude, I think that our entire society, I think that um we see compassion as trying to help someone avoid suffering, avoid pain, avoid going through, for lack of a better term, what someone would need to go through to develop, to get stronger.
Yeah,
And we
yeah.
see that as compassion.
So is that compassion?
No.
What is compassion? Because
Um,
everybody, I see that word thrown around everywhere. Everywhere. It's like
yeah, look, man, I think that in my eyes, compassion truly is helping someone clearly. If someone's in a tough spot, right?
Yeah,
Your loved one, your
yeah,
family member, your friend, your
yeah.
significant other, whatever. And they're in a tough spot. They're in a dark place in their life. A lot of people would view compassion as trying to help them uh, avoid those feelings, those negative feelings, those emotions, and get them back on the side where they're feeling good. But it begs the question: like, who's to say that maybe the circumstances that they find themselves in aren't their fault, which can sound cold, but also, how could they develop from it?
Right. Absolutely.
Right? Like, how could they, like, I'm not trying to say that everything is everyone's fault. Like, everything that you go through is your fault 100%. But I think it's a healthy perspective to view it that way. Because if you are the one that created the problem that you live in right now,
Right.
then you're also the one that can fix it.
Right.
And I think that compassion isn't, well, instead of talking about what compassion is, I think that what we can say is compassion, what compassion is. I think compassion is helping someone clearly see the situation that they're in,
Mm-hmm.
understanding that they're not alone in that it's a human experience, that everybody has gone through something similar to it. All their
Okay.
ancestors have dealt with that before in the past.
Okay.
That humans have made it through a similar situation, that it's okay, it's normal for them to go through that situation. And furthermore, that they can develop by going through that situation.
Okay, so you brought up something very interesting, and I want to ask you this question because I'm not. I think this is one space that maybe you and I stand on the, not on the same door. I
Cool.
guess, and
Cool.
what it is, you know, what you said is reminding them that they're not alone.
Yeah.
What's wrong with letting people know that they are alone in their problems?
I'm not preventative of that suffering. I just don't view it that way.
Right.
I don't think I truly don't believe that any suffering that you and I can go through
Right.
is an individual form of suffering. There's um I don't think that there's a circumstance that you can go through that another human hasn't gone through before.
True.
That's
True.
what I mean by you're not alone.
I see. Okay, that makes sense. That totally makes sense to me. You are right. There's like generally, like with the amount of history that's passed, the billions of people that have lived and died at this point throughout history. I totally agree with you that everybody's gone through, everybody's gone through what we've gone through. I guess the way I kind of hear it when people say you're not alone. It's like it's that they're trying to jump in with them and hold their hand and like you,
Mm.
let's do this together.
Yeah, yeah.
And I've come to realize, man, that there's just certain things that you cannot do with anyone but yourself. You have to do it yourself.
Mm.
And today's like, we live in an incredibly soft, I think, soft society, especially the younger generation. And it's almost as if the idea of being alone is like, it's like the most tragic thing in the world,
Mhm.
when really sometimes it can be the most liberating thing. But if we don't allow people to go through what they need to go through in isolation, it's just causing perpetual suffering.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because now you're involved in it and you got to come back and check on them over and over, and see, because you're preventing them to face what they need to face. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the reality is most of our suffering, it doesn't just get created overnight. So it's not going to go away overnight.
Mhm.
So we have to give people time to sit in their nonsense and sit in their bullshit and overcome themselves. And constantly wanting to jump in, I think is in the long run can be very, very detrimental. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it can create dependence too.
Absolutely. Which I mean, I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but you're right. It does create that. And if the person who, who's they're depending on isn't available or wanting to help, it's just like, and now it creates like this spin cycle of feeling rejected and all of this stuff. And now you got like, it's just, I don't know. I don't
Not
know.
only that, but what if you lose that person?
Absolutely.
Like there's so many people
So
that are
true.
dependent on their parents.
Yes.
Like, do you really think, like, I think one of the greatest, and look, I haven't gone through this personally, so I can't really say this with too much perspective, but I think there's a lot of steps that I can speak to. I'll speak to men specifically for this, but like,
Do you
I think
identify as one?
absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. I don't understand that question 100%.
I don't understand it either.
I don't understand what you're asking me right now, but yes. But I
Yeah.
think that there's a lot of steps within the journey of becoming a man, right? Like, I think that we think that when you reach a certain age, you're all of a sudden a man, which, I mean, legally makes sense, but mentally doesn't.
Yeah.
I think that when you you get your first job, you have your first heartbreak, you move out of your parents' home. There's all these, you get your first car, you get all these different milestones. I think that one of the last things that makes a man, aside from like marriage and having a child and etc.,
Mhm.
is losing his parents. Because I think that that is one of the ultimate dependence that we have in this world, is like, when I have problems, when I have struggles that I face that I don't know if I can overcome,
So
my
interesting.
my parents are people that I call, right? Like, I'm like,
Right.
oh, can you help me out through this jam?
Right.
And kind of just speak to what you were talking about earlier, like this idea of being alone in this world. And you have to struggle with, like, because there's definitely problems that I haven't like gone to my parents for, and I'm sure you could relate to this as well.
Yeah.
Whether it's out of embarrassment or out of, hopefully, the idea that I can deal with this on my own.
Yeah.
I don't need them for help for this.
100%. I think that's a very, very, very important moment in every person's life,
Yeah.
man or woman.
Yeah.
You need to come to that realization.
Right.
But I mean, to be honest, I think, I would almost love to have an episode by itself in terms of relationship with our parents and how it influences it. It's such a long conversation for me, at least the way I see it. But you're so right, and it's what you said there is like what the thing that makes a man
It's
is
one of the things.
is one of the things that
One of the
makes them
things.
lose their parents. What do you mean by that? Like, is it like if you go through that process, just by happenstance, that process happening, and you have to go through it, on the other side, you're going to come out as a man?
I think that it just forces you to deal with that solitude that you're speaking about being alone. I only speak about that, and this is kind of maybe my internal perspective or beliefs or values, but that's one of my greatest things that I meditate on, and things that I'm, I guess, I could use the word scared of, is that, when my parents pass away, I think about that all the time.
How old are you?
I'm 20. I'll be 28 soon.
Okay, right.
It's just something that,
It's a natural time to be really pondering that. I'll be honest. Yeah.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people fear mortality and fear death.
Mm-hmm.
I am more afraid of my parents' death than I am of my own.
And what is that fear centered around? You think, like, what makes you afraid?
I don't know, dude. I think it is just that dependence. Like, I think it is wanting to hold on so tightly to something that you love.
Right. Yeah,
You got a vulnerable ass Mark today, dude.
couldn't be more grateful, man. This is great stuff. I mean, no, you're right. I can even see it in your body language. You know what I mean? It's a big it's not just for you, man. I think every single human being, regardless of your relationship with your parents, even if you had a negative one, I know that when people lose their parents, it's still a very, very difficult process to go through. Goodbyes are very, very difficult. And I I don't know if it's us depending. I think there's a sense of comfort that comes
Mm-hmm.
with always being able to go home. Like, I've moved out I mean, I've been on my, you grow up, you're living as an adult. You probably moved out you've probably been on your own for a long, long time now, paying
Yeah,
your
a few
bills,
years. Yeah.
developing into an adult and doing all of these things. But there's just there's just idea of being able to go home that just gives you comfort. You know what I mean? I visit my parents like 2, 3 times a week.
Oh yeah.
I do my best to. And even though if it's for like 20 minutes or an hour or whatnot, I always try to see them, spend time with them. But it's it's not just being there, just being in their presence. Like it kind of gives you this comfort of just being around.
Oh yeah,
Right.
dude.
When I'm going through,
I can get a good meal if I need.
that's the. I think my reaction there says everything. It's
Yeah.
definitely the meal, man. The home cooked meal. You don't have to think about it. You're right, man. This is a vulnerable conversation for sure. I think.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't think we'd get down this road, but
That's what I do. I dig deep.
yeah, absolutely, man. But I will say this though, I don't know if necessarily going through that process, even if you go through it, is what makes you a man. I think there's people who've gone through that and they still remain boys.
I'd say okay. I would say it's part of the hero's journey.
Yes. Yes. Okay.
I wouldn't say it's like a fundamental, and I wouldn't say that you're right, because there's people that can go through it and not come out the other side a man.
Right.
I'm saying it's
because it leads to some people's self-destruction.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm saying it's a call to like a hero's journey,
Right.
and not everybody answers that call.
Right. I'll tell you that I've been much more comfortable now at this age. Like I'm a little older than you, by like I think 3-4 years now, and I've become a little bit more comfortable with this concept in my mind. I used to, I used to wake up sometimes in my mid-20s, just sometimes in the middle of the night, just freak out in the sense of like, holy, like not be able to sleep because I'm thinking like at some point I am going to lose my parents. It would scare the living daylights out of me. And it was much so centered around like, it was feeling guilty, that all the guilt stuff about disappointing them or not doing this, like that stuff comes up, you know what I mean? And I'm like, and it makes me think about, I got to do this. I got to get this done before my parents pass, because it's a reality.
Dude, I feel like that's part of what I'm talking about.
Right.
Because I have the exact same feelings and emotions. It's like,
right.
I have to achieve this so that my parents can see me achieve it. I have to do this so I can take care of them in this situation. Right. There's so many different, like, have you seen, and this is just like kind of my own like weird question, have you seen your parents lose a parent?
Yes.
Dude, how crazy is that?
That was pretty intense. Well, what's interesting is both my parents, both of them had different, very much different reactions. At least on the surface, same. With what was going on and how they dealt with it. I assume your mom was probably, if I'm assuming, but I not to assume.
One grandparent. I have one. My mom's mom.
Okay,
is the only grandparent I have.
Right. And for both my parents, like my mom was obviously a bit more emotional. My dad was a bit more, reserved in his reaction. But I'm sure it was difficult for both. You know what I mean? It's a difficult process to go through. But it's and if you're really close with a parent, that makes it even more difficult.
Oh yeah.
Right.
I think I've seen my dad cry twice in my whole life, and
right.
that was one of the times I saw him cry. It was when he lost his dad.
I'd imagine. And how did that make you feel?
I was kind of, I was barely old enough to understand.
I see.
I was like 10 years old. So
how old was your dad's dad when he lost him?
Dude, we got old generations in my family. I don't know why. It's like this weird thing in my family, but so my grandpa was born in 1913.
Right. Oh wow.
Yeah, dude.
That was a couple years after the Titanic went down.
Yeah, dude.
Holy, he might know.
And then
Leonardo.
my dad was born in 58,
right.
And I was born 95. So there's about 45 years between each generation.
Wow.
So when I was 10, my grandpa would have been 92.
Right.
And my dad would have been, I don't know, like 50 something.
So your grandpa was 92 when your dad lost his dad. He was 92 years old.
Yeah, I think he passed away in 2005. So 92, yeah.
Right.
1913 and 2005.
And you said he cried.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what's crazy? And your grandpa was 92 years old. I'll tell you this, that I've had like some experience with death, and even at a young age, like I lost I didn't lose, but like one of my good friends from high school passed away very early. He was like 21, 22 years old, from cancer, and and watching him kind of deteriorate and have that slow process, and then a few years later, I think it was a couple of years later, or 3 years later, my ex at the time that I was, she also passed away from cancer.
Holy shit, man.
Yeah. So, and then I saw one of my uncles pass away. So like death is kind of like it's been around for me to kind of witness. So the idea of mortality, but the funny thing is, like considering my own mortality, I don't know how you were as a child, but I've always, like, even as a kid, the idea of death was, I think around 17, 18 is really when I began to really consider it. I got into a car accident, and after that accident, like I'm like, holy, like, I could have completely disappeared in this moment. What would have happened? And I really went down this like loop, and I look it up with faith. I don't really know what my point is, but this was saying that it doesn't matter how old the person is, how long you spent time with them. If you know someone, a goodbye is always difficult.
Oh, bro, it sucks.
Yeah, a permanent goodbye is always difficult.
Oh, yeah.
Right. But now I understand why. And when I say, like, I've become a little bit more comfortable around the concept of losing my parents, is because, I mean, I'll tell you this.
Your mom's watching this. You just said you were comfortable losing your parents. Come on, man.
I really hope she don't see this. But it's no, I mean, I pray that, we got many more years to go. They're still very, very young and pretty in good health. And this is why these conversations are so difficult to have. But I think they're necessary. They're so necessary. But one of the reasons is because I've stopped idolizing my parents.
Right.
You know what I mean? And as a child, you go through that. I think when you're a kid, you idolize your parents in the way that they're like, they're amazing. They're your entire world. That's the only world you know. Even if they're negative, even if it's a very intense or a volatile home.
It's the first role model you get.
It's still your world.
You see your father, how he treats your mom, and you think that's how a man treats a woman. You
right.
see your mother loving your father, you think that's what love is.
Right.
That's what love is.
Absolutely. But when you grow up into an adult, if you still hold any resentments towards your parents, that's still a form of idolization to me.
Yeah,
you're still idolizing them.
Yeah.
And if you're still, even so, you might think, hey, you might not have a good relationship with your parents. Some people don't talk to their parents forever, but even hearing that they pass, it's still going to set you up for a very painful time, I think.
Yeah, because it removes the idea of closure.
Yes. I never heard it that way, but yeah, that was. Listen, man, I did not expect to go down that road, but here we are, man. That was a very, very interesting conversation.
Welcome to my ADHD brain, man. I think we got on this though because we were talking about
dependency and suffering.
Talking about comfort as well.
Right, and
I think that's what breeds dependence is comfort, because
Absolutely.
that's comfort. To go back to what I was saying earlier, is comfort is one of the greatest things that can tip that pleasure to pain scale to the pleasure side.
Right. But I think, if you grow and you have your own children, I don't have children, you don't have children, but I do think that, once, God willing, if we have children, that kind of helps close the loop. The cycle, the cycle of life kind of gives you some perspective.
What loop? The loop of like trauma, like say like childhood, like if you have a bad relationship with your parents?
No, not per se, but just it's like not a personal loop, but like just the circle of life. It gives you perspective of life, I think, once you have your own children. Not to say it makes it easier to lose your parents, but you have a better understanding. Like, hey, this is going to, it's just a way. And now you have your own children to care for. Like, it gives you a lot more, I guess, reason to keep going. Per se, I don't know. I could be totally off. I don't know.
Yeah, well, and I think that the best understanding that I have, like I said, or like you said, I'm not a father, but I think the best understanding that I have of parenting is like your goal is to set your kids up with enough skills and knowledge and know-how to survive after you go.
Yes.
Like I think that's kind of the idea of it.
That's definitely it.
And so, like, I think that part of the fear that a lot of people will have around losing their parents is not being at a point where they can provide for themselves
Right.
enough
Right.
to not be dependent on their parents when their parents pass.
Right. And I think that's the greatest thing you can do as a child is to heal yourself and make yourself strong in the
Become
world
dependent as fast as possible.
because it gives your parents peace.
Yeah.
When they know their time's come.
Yeah.
Like it gives them a lot of peace.
Yeah. I don't want my parents to be laying on their deathbed worrying about how I'm going to be doing.
Absolutely.
I want them to know, like, oh, we did it. Oh, we did an all right job. They'll be okay.
Bro, I think you sitting here talking like this is great. It's evidence that they've done an amazing job. I'm sure they're very proud of you, even up to this point.
Better, I love you, Mom and Dad. Hope you see this.
Okay, moving on, because for the sake of time, man, before I get you all teary-eyed here, you know what I mean?
I'll cry with you.
Pussy. No. I'm kidding. But, so we were talking about suffering.
Yeah.
Right. And I want to now kind of go, at least from my perspective, what I see is like the reality of the world right now is it looks like when it comes to mental health per se.
Mm.
And we touched on this on the episode that didn't make it, which was, at least from what I see, is although there's like an array of tools and infrastructures and like programs from government programs to private charities and all of these things that are out there to help individuals with their mental health, people are suffering with mental health, quote unquote mental health, more than ever. Mm-hmm. Do you think is it time to look at these, agencies or infrastructures and look at them and be like, you know what? You failed at what you're saying you're doing. And it's time to leave us alone. Maybe people themselves have a better understanding of me. Because what other area do you see where it's like it's constant failure? The numbers are terrible, what the numbers show, but yet we keep on supporting this. We keep on supporting these ideas.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's most areas, to be honest.
Yeah,
I think that in mental health is a tricky one for sure. But I think that's just the way that these organizations are set up to be. I think that any and you and I have spoken about this ad nauseum, like off air. But I think most charities are just fleecing people of their money.
Yeah, it's a write-off.
I think that especially in regards to mental health, when people say that they're raising money for mental health, and dude, I almost fell into this trap myself. Like when I was starting Risen Fallen, before it was Risen Fallen, I was selling hats and I was donating money.
Right.
And I know that for most of these people that have these campaigns, there's like, the Bell Let's Talk. There's all these different campaigns that people have for, for every blank, we're going to donate blank amount to blank charity. Mm-hmm. It's like, in my eyes, like that's just your marketing campaign. That's the way that you're just selling more of whatever you already sell.
Absolutely.
And
you're using mental health as a means to kind of gain a new market.
Yeah. But I think part of your question was in what other industry? I mean, I see that in all the industries.
Cancer.
Like cancer research was the first one that came to my mind.
Right.
There's tons of different areas where we're raising money, yet the problems are just getting significantly worse.
Right.
Forever.
So is it... Do you think it's a time that people, like just everyday people today, they stop utilizing these quote unquote programs that the government wants to put out?
Yes and no.
Like, for example, I'll tell you that. Sorry, I cut you off there.
No,
but I was just going to say, for example, like the new mayor of Vancouver, right? He got elected, and one of his campaign promises was he's going to send out 100 new mental health workers to send out to crisis situations.
Fantastic. Great guy. Sure. Yeah, I don't know what that's going to solve. I don't know.
Right? And and when they raised 10% property taxes this year on residents in Vancouver, they're already, like, everybody knows right now people are being squeezed of their money.
Fleeced. That's my favorite term.
Yeah, they're fleeced, and they're pinching them even more. And they want to present a 9.2% tax hike, right, on property taxes in Vancouver. And one of his reasons was because he wants to fulfill his campaign promise of hiring 100 new healthcare workers and new
Great.
VPD officers.
Fantastic. Well, I do support that.
Do you?
Fuck
Well,
yeah.
the police, yeah.
Yeah.
But what about 100 new healthcare workers? Not healthcare workers, mental health care workers.
Yeah, I don't even know what that means. Dude, look, the way I see it is this. I don't think that the government or the medical system is going to provide a service that's going to help people go through the psychological suffering that human beings are meant to go through.
Mm-hmm.
The same way I don't think that there is I don't think that there's a way politically out of the political problems that we face either.
Right.
I think that a lot of people are looking for a savior. They're looking for someone to come in and be a superhero for their lives, and they're suffering with something, and they're thinking, man, I wish someone could come help me. I wish that this service was provided. I wish that this was available for me. I wish that was going to help me. I wish this circumstance was different.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's not happening. It's not.
Right.
You're going through something, and this is kind of what I was saying before, is you're going through something that another human has already made it through. You have the capability that you need to get through whatever you're going through right now.
So go
You
through
don't
it.
need exterior forces. You don't need help from so-and-so. You don't have to think, oh, well, if this person didn't do that to me 16 years ago, I'd be okay right now.
Absolutely.
Right? You're going through something that I'd say that probably one of your ancestors recently, your parents have gone through the same thing. Your
Yeah.
grandparents have gone through the same thing.
Yeah.
Your great-grandparents have gone through this. Everyone you know is going to go through a version of what you're going through right now.
Right.
And it's survivable. It's normal. It's not like your story is different than anyone else's story in that way specifically.
100% agree. 100%. And I think instead of raising taxes, 10% of taxes and money from people, and trying to, sell it off as we're going to hire healthcare workers, I think what we're really lacking as a community and as a city and just in general in the world, maybe we should hike it up to 100% personal responsibility. If people start to take responsibility for their life,
Yeah.
right, and what's going on within their life, because what is a healthcare worker showing up going to do with a crisis call? You know what I mean? If you see a domestic, I don't know. I mean, some people might disagree with this, but I don't know what a mental health care worker is going to do if there's a domestic violence case.
Yeah, I
at
think
a
it's
house,
circumstantial. I think
right?
it's circumstantial.
Right.
I think
it is circumstantial. And some people say sending police officers to every situation is a little bit overzealous.